coming to our final speaker tonight, Bryony Cooper. She is one of the women entrepreneurs featured in the Dear Female Founder book. Maybe some of you know about it. If you don't, get it. It's extremely valuable and inspiring. And I was massively inspired by Bryony and her story. And she is a serial entrepreneur and now a VC investor. She has co-founded 3 tech companies by the age of 30 and has had clients on all continents. And it is really, for me today, an absolute honor to have her speak at our launch event. So thank you so much for joining, and over to you.
Thank you, Dora. And hi, everyone. I'm really happy to meet you, and I'm honored to be asked to speak tonight as well. Thanks for the lovely introduction. So yeah, really all I want to do is share my story with you because it's pretty unconventional, I would say. I've taken a very different route to becoming an investor to any other one I've seen before. Yeah, so I think I can just offer you some stories from not fitting the mold. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do right now first. So I'm a managing partner at Arkley Brinc VC. It's a venture capital fund for early stage startups, and we invest in deep tech topics. So food and agricultural tech, health and med tech, IoT and hardware, this sort of thing. So it's already quite niche and very few women in this category. But yeah, in the 2 years that I've been doing this, prior to that, I spent 10 years in the startup ecosystem. And I like to think that I've had a really 360 view of it, because as Dora mentioned, first I was actually a tech startup co-founder and CEO of 3 companies. Then I went on to run a venture builder, or like an innovation lab in Berlin. It was a spin-off from a company called IXDS, if any of you Berliners know them. And then I was running an accelerator program for Brinc. So I kind of moved from being a founder into a more mentorship role, and then eventually to the investor role. So getting to see how the whole investment process goes from both sides of the table, of being the one having to beg for money to the one giving the money, has been really interesting and has given me some great perspectives, which hopefully I can share with you through mentoring on this program. For me, the most interesting part is before I even got into the tech startup world. If I take you back, if you'd met me 15 years ago, you would have found me singing in a smoky jazz bar in England, because all I wanted to do when I was growing up was be a famous singer. It didn't even occur to me to run my own business. I never considered myself. I always thought my big sister was the bossy one, and I thought she's definitely going to run a company someday, but I didn't think that was in my future. But having gained some perspective and looking back, I realized that I actually possessed a lot of the personality traits of an entrepreneur back then when I was younger, even though I didn't recognize that at the time. I was very ambitious, I was very tenacious, I was resourceful. So as soon as I turned 16 and I was legally allowed to actually go into those clubs to be able to sing professionally, I found myself an agent. I got a loan to buy a musical sound system. I had a photo shoot and recorded a demo, and I started going out and gigging on the weekends alongside my studies. Yeah, so for me, that was the dream come true. And of course, along with that came the business side, that I had to register as self-employed and I had to do tax returns, but that didn't interest me. It was just really, that's what had to be done so that I could facilitate living my dream and my passion of singing. And I actually continued doing that for 7 years, and studying and then working alongside. And it was a great time in my life. But after a while, I started to feel like there was something missing and I wanted more. So it was time to move to the big city, to London. And in one of my earlier jobs, I was working at a place called the Business Club, which was also a membership community for SMEs, so small to medium enterprises. And this was actually my first interactions with small business owners and seeing a little bit about how valuable networking was. And this has been one of my core takeaways throughout my whole career, is that building a network of and a community of other people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, even if it's in a completely different industry sector or a different stage of the business, it's really invaluable. I wish I had actually had a community like FemGems when I started, because when I started my first startup, I was completely clueless. I didn't know anything about the startup ecosystem or all of this jargon and terminology that you hear. I just had to kind of learn everything on the go. Yeah, so it was interesting, but you get to learn very fast. Okay, so yeah, when I moved to London, at first I was working as a copywriter, but I had a really horrible boss. I had to deal with, you know, kind of being poorly paid and doing too many hours, and also getting sexually harassed by the boss, which is hopefully not something you've all been through, but I know many women that have. And so my co-founder and I said, screw this, let's go and start our own company, just doing the same what we do for him. So the first company was really continuing the work we were doing with copywriting and web development, but we just made our horrible boss our first client, so he kept paying us, and that enabled us to start our own business. And from there, everything kind of snowballed. We didn't really have a plan, but we had some good ideas, and this co-founder was the one that I actually started my first startup with and came to Berlin. The one lesson I got from that was, if you're an entrepreneur, you do have to take some risks, because it wasn't really until I started saying yes to things that scare me that the really interesting stuff started to happen. I feel like kind of in my early 20s, I was playing it safe and trying to live the life that I was comfortable with and things that I was used to. But I think if I continued doing that, I probably would be still living in the same village and married to the first boyfriend I had. My life would look very different to how it does now. Yeah, so when we pitched our idea for the first time, it was my first time coming to Berlin in Germany, because we were invited to the finals of Seed Camp. Maybe you've heard of Seed Camp. And this was the first time we applied to any sort of startup contest. And when I got here, there was a room full of 100 mentors and investors who were predominantly male. I mean, I think I was one of about 5 women in the room, and certainly the only female founder that was pitching on stage that day. So it was really intimidating, and we didn't actually win that competition. But one of the investors in the audience really liked our pitch and followed up with us, and he actually offered us even more money as an investment if we agreed to come to Berlin. And honestly, at the time, every fiber in my body was just saying, I don't want to, I don't want to. This is really scary. This is too big. But my logical brain took over and said, don't be an idiot, Bryony. You're never going to get another chance like this. So even though I was scared and I wanted to stay in my comfy, safe space, I said, okay, screw it, let's go. So I moved to Berlin, and I was meant to stay for 6 months, and that was 8 years ago, still here. So it all turned out pretty well in the end. A couple of takeaways I want to give you from what I learned is, it's not going to be smooth sailing. In fact, there's times when it's really, really hard. And it took me many years to learn to actually listen to my body and take care of my mind as well. Because I think I didn't realize that I had burnout until about 3 years after it happened. There was a stage in my first startup after I'd been there for 4 years and things got really hard, when the company was facing bankruptcy and I had to let go employees who had really become friends over time, and there was investor disputes and co-founder disputes and unhappy customers, and it was really, really tough. And I think all startups go through these phases. I mean, we recovered from all of that mess and then went through it again. It's really a roller coaster. And you know, you learn that you're more resilient than you realize. When I'm looking back, I still don't know how I managed to continue getting up and going in every day. But I think that's also another really unique character trait of entrepreneurs, that we are really resilient, and you can just keep going if you believe in what you're doing. Okay, so a couple more things is trust your gut. That was one of my biggest takeaways as well. You need to trust your instincts, because sometimes if you just feel like something's wrong in a situation or with a person, normally it turns out to be right. So have the confidence to trust in yourself, even if you can't really explain why. And also something that Lubomir mentioned at the beginning about knowing your own value. This was something else that I struggled with for so long. Have you heard of Imposter Syndrome? This is something I had for such a long time. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get found out. I don't belong here. I'm not good enough to have this position. Because I thought, you know, everyone else who is a CEO, who is an investor, they've all been to, you know, some top business school and they have an MBA in finance, and, you know, they've got all these academic qualifications. And I questioned for a long time if I really deserve to be here. But you know what? It's I think personally quite refreshing to have someone who isn't just a carbon cutout of every other investor that you've ever met, and who can bring a completely different perspective to the table. And also what I learned is that whatever your background or your skills or your education is from before, you're going to have so many transferable skills. So when I look at my background of singing on stage, I found out, wow, that actually makes me really good at pitching, because I'm not scared of standing in front of an audience and holding a microphone. And when I was lined up next to 10 very nervous young men who were talking about their technology, their tech's probably way better than mine, but they didn't know how to sell it and, you know, how to present their vision. So actually I had a competitive advantage over them because I used to be a singer. So I think there's no university degree that could have taught me that so much. A little bit more about the kind of more practical stuff as well that I learned is always get a second opinion before you sign any legal contracts, whether you're going to be getting investment or a strategic partnership with a company, especially if you're going to be parting with shares or equity. Again, when I started, I had no idea about any of this legal stuff. And in my opinion, lawyers will make the language particularly convoluted, because otherwise, why would we pay them so much? But if you can get a lawyer who understands how startups work, or you can get a mentor who understands how these processes work, it's always good to have someone to give it a once over, because I know that I wish I had that in the early days, because there's certainly people in the industry that might try to take advantage of your inexperience if it's your first time raising money, for example. And then, yeah, the final lesson was, it's as your business grows, and it can happen really fast. I mean, we started my first startup with 3 co-founders, and we grew the business to 22 people, and it just, everything happened so quickly. But try to learn every department and every role in your company as the company grows, because if you are the CEO or you're the founder of your company, you need to know what's going on and how all the pieces work together. So obviously, if you're not a software engineer, you can't be expected to learn how to program on the side of your day job. But really, you know, you should be the one talking with your customers and understanding what they need, so that you could step into the role of whether you're doing sales or technical support or the finance. Because in the end, if you don't understand everything that's going on, it's going to get a bit confusing, and you need to be the glue that bonds all of these departments together. So yeah, learn to wear many different hats. As a startup founder, you need to be super versatile. Yeah, so I think that's kind of my main takeaways. But lastly, about having the big vision, you need to define what your big vision is and thinking long-term into the future. What's your purpose for existence, your business? This is something that you should really share with every member of your team, and also share with the world. Because what I have seen as well happening, not only in my companies, but also in other startup founders' companies, is you're thinking so much about the problems that you need to tackle in your immediate future. Often you're going to be firefighting, or, you know, just trying to think, how am I going to get that first 10 customers and then the first 100 customers? But you also need to think about the bigger picture and the long-term vision to make sure that you're all running in the same direction. This is something that can kind of navigate you as well, and make sure that you're staying on the right path when it comes to your ethics, your ideology. You know, having just a company handbook that's putting that into words and into black and white will really help you stay true to your goals. Yeah, so that's about it really. So if you have any questions about founding or co-founding a company, or the acceleration process or the investment process, then I can help you with that. And I really look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Bryony. You mentioned so many valuable points. It really, you know, your 360 degree really shines through throughout your talk. Thank you very much.